Hello and welcome to Inside Training, an official Hibernian FC podcast, which is brought to you by our partners Bartercard, where we really try and get inside the minds of key people at the Hibernian Training Centre. And in this, our first episode of 2023, I'm delighted to be joined by our under-18 coach, Gareth Evans. Gareth played an integral role in our youngsters' UEFA Youth League campaign, but he'll also in this give us a greater understanding and insight into youth development at the football club. So Gareth, thank you for joining us on this podcast. It's fair to say you had a glorious playing career, but then after you retired, you went into the coaching game, worked with first team, academies, but you always had that passion for youth development, didn't you? Just where did that come from?
Yeah, it was great to have a half decent career, I guess, and play for the clubs that I did, and it was towards the tail end, just when I was around about 27, 28, that Alec Miller kind of got me into coaching a little bit and started doing my B licence and started on my A licence. And as I went down the leagues, then I didn't really have a permanent thought on going on being a coach, but it started intriguing me a little bit more and more as I did get older. So it was actually when I went to Alloa, I started playing part-time when I was 33, that a great man called Terry Christie got me into the coaching side of things and started helping him with the coaching and the manager of the team at Alloa, and ended up staying there for 5 or 6 years with Terry and then latterly Tom Hendry. And those were really good days and taught me a lot about what the coaching was all about and what managing was all about and how kind of the other side of being a football player. So those early years were was a great learning curve for me, just to find out what it was like on the other side of the fence.
What was it about working with younger players and trying to help them have a career that kind of really shone through for you?
Yeah, it's really rewarding having younger players, and you feel as though you can help them and fold them and put your thoughts onto them. But I think it's having an understanding, and it's how you treat the younger players that allows you then to be able to coach them, because it's the person first and then it's the football player afterwards always.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because it's probably something that people don't consider further down than a first team. There's been a lot in recent years, I would say, about football managers at a first team level having to deal more and be more of a man manager. But that works all the way down. Obviously, there's players that have all sorts of different upbringings and pressures at home. And for a young player, especially those under 18, it can be quite stressful at times. As a coach, football, I suppose, is a release for the young players. But how do you have to take in backgrounds, personalities, home life into account when they come here on an evening or a Saturday?
Yeah, especially in a city like Edinburgh as well, where it's so diverse. As much as I think it's about 25% of children in Edinburgh go to private schools, and then you've got areas which aren't so affluent, that the kids maybe aren't happy at school, don't enjoy school, and so it's bringing all those kids together and making them happy as one group, to try and get the best out of them all as football players as you can. So when everyone comes onto a football pitch, there's nobody different to anybody else. Everybody's trying to impress, everybody's trying to enjoy themselves playing football, and you've got to make an environment where, yes, they enjoy themselves and yes, they're going to learn. Some of those players might learn quicker than others. Some of them might be more educated than others, but some of them might be more intelligent on football than others. And I just find that fascinating, to be honest with you, and then seeing what comes out of the end of it to see if you can get any of them to become full-time footballers.
Yeah, I suppose coaching techniques would be really interesting with working with young players, especially as they go through the age groups.
Yeah, most definitely. For me, it's got to be a questioning type coaching philosophy when they're younger. Asking them questions on the pitch all the time, trying to get them to give you the answers, rather than you telling them all the time. But finding the right time to educate them, and having that command style about you as well. So it's finding that mix between command and question and coaching techniques. But that's all in the background. As you get older, it's just something that you do and you don't think about. But the more that I have looked back on it and studied what you have done and what other people do, the questioning type of coaching for younger players is so important. Trying to get them to give you the answers.
I was going to say, where did you learn that? Because you were quite kind of new on the coaching scene when you came into it. Is that something that just comes with experience? You pick up other people, or is it through the courses or like books reading?
I think it's a bit of everything. A bit of reading up on it, a bit of doing the courses, but most of all, it's just being out on the pitch and doing it. And as you do get older and become more experienced, I think you realise that you've done all this in the past, and it's just something that comes natural, to be honest with you, and it's something that you don't think about.
Yeah, and I can imagine it's quite similar when you're looking to recruit young players as well. You see kind of scouts from like all different areas and ages, looking at under 10s all the way up to see who you can bring in. How does that work, and what do people look for?
It's a really good question. For me, you're looking for somebody that can play to start with, that has technique, that has a natural feel for the football, that enjoys playing football, that smiles. And as one old manager told me, he was actually the manager at Hearts, a guy called Alan McDonald. I asked him what he looked for when he went to watch a player. And he said, I never look what a player can do when he's got the ball. I look at what he does when he loses the ball and if he wants to get it back. And that's something that always stuck with me. So, you look at a player's appetite. If he gives the ball away, does he want to get it back right away? And that tells you a lot about a player, even at a younger age. But I think it's just looking at a player to see, if it's something that you can work with. Another one was a guy called Lilian Thuram. I think I remember doing it on my pro license, and I went over to Monaco to look at their youth academy, and they said that Lilian Thuram was what was it? They said technically catastrophic when he was younger, and I think he went on to get over 100 caps for France and made himself a multi-millionaire. So somebody might be really physical and quick that you can turn into a football player. So it's all different sorts that can eventually make it as football players.
What was that like going to Monaco's academy? Because I can imagine it's quite different to one here in Scotland.
Yeah, it was good. It was a lot more technical, but again, that big ball of fire in the sky helped them down there. Being out on the pitch for longer rather than the wind and the rain that we have here for most of the year. But it taught me a little bit more about spending a bit more time with players. Technically, and being patient, whereas sometimes when I was younger, I just wanted it to happen straight away and wanted the players to be great. I know the manager made a quote the other week about the popcorn quote, where some of the players pop earlier than others, and some take the time and pop late. It's absolutely right. It is like popcorn. Some do come out early and develop early and are that fully developed player when they're 13, 14. Others wait until 16, 17, 18, but how long is the club going to wait for them to do that? So it's all that comes into the mix that I find really, really fascinating.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, because you see it all the time up here down south. Like Darren McGregor's a really good example, and he burst on the professional scene really late on. When you're looking at young players, how hard is it to judge when that pop moment is going to be?
Nigh and impossible, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But we have to make judgments on players, and we have to make decisions on players, and what we have to be is mindful of their education. Their academic education is paramount. So we can't be taking players on here if we just think they're going to get a contract and they're not going to make it as a player. So we've got to make sure it's right for them, for their families, for everybody concerned, and those decisions are so hard to make. In fact, nigh and impossible to make, but we have to try and make them as best as we can. Also mindful of the fact that we want Hibs to see academy graduates come through and play in the first team, which the club has done very well over the past few years.
Yeah, you mentioned the first team there. Obviously, since Lee Johnson came in, he's introduced an attacking style of play. When does that start to filter down into the academy, and at what age group does that philosophy filter down to help then that transition into the first team?
Yeah, I think it becomes more apparent as they get older. I think in the younger stages, it's about fun. It's about touches of the ball. It's about enjoying playing football. It's only later on then in the academy at the latter stages where, you're trying to teach them the winning side of things, because I think the players naturally have that will to win anyway, no matter what game they're playing, whether it's their mates up at the Astro after school or whether that's coming on a training even here and playing a bounce game at the end of training, that they want to win.
Yeah, and they obviously have individual development plans as well, don't they, the young players? Just talk to us a little bit around that and how a success story almost of one of those kind of coming to fruition.
Cool, you put me right on the sit there.
It's like a job interview.
It certainly is. I'm trying to think of a good example. I think Murray Aitken would be a good example. We always spoke to Murray about his athleticism and his endurance levels and how he could make more forward runs. So we're trying to get Murray Aitken to go and run beyond the strikers more often. But we can't just say that to him. We have to then devise training sessions for him to do that, show him on the analysis, and then rather than him go all the time, just really do it subconsciously in his mind. So training sessions that we do set up where they have to get in an end zone and scoring a wee goal, run round the goal, come back. It's all very boring really for me to explain here, but Murray would have been doing that day after day, and he probably thought, oh, not that again, not that again, not that again, till in the end he was just doing it in his sleep.
Yeah.
So when it came to a game, he was always then running behind the strikers and doing it. So he's then doing it without even thinking. So I find that's really a lot of coaching, is getting players to do things that they wouldn't have done before, and then do it without even thinking. So he's painting pictures for them a lot of the time, and showing them things. Paul Hanlon was another one. Paul was in the reserves when I was here back in 2007. We worked on Paul all the time with his left foot, wrapping passes in the barn here, wrapping passes into small goals and hitting diagonals. And every time I see Paul hit a diagonal in the first team now, I think, well, I hope I had a little bit of a say in how he's been able to do that. And it was interesting. He was out helping with the coaching last night with the under-18s, and we were playing a switch of play possession drill, and one of the players hit a big diagonal, and I said it was Hanlon-esque, and he just started sniggering. So it makes me feel old when I see him standing at the side as well. But yeah, it's getting kids to do things that they wouldn't have been able to do before without even thinking. I think that's a big part of coaching.
Yeah, and you mentioned Murray Aitken. He obviously had a big part to play in the UEFA Youth League, which we will discuss any moment. In my role covering Hibernian FC home and away, I'm constantly online using my phone, laptop or tablet, and I know the importance of staying safe online. That's why I use NordVPN. By using NordVPN, this protects me from hackers and gives me peace of mind whilst online. NordVPN also enables me to switch my virtual location. Thanks to our great partnership with NordVPN, you can get an exclusive discount plus 4 additional months for free by going to nordvpn.com/Hibs. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee if NordVPN isn't for you. Stay safe online. Okay, Gareth, so the UEFA Youth League, obviously a huge success for the football club. It really reinvigorated the supporters, I would say, as well. I mean, the support we had at Easter Road was magnificent. For you, obviously, you worked with that 2004 group of players. I know some came in, some would have left during their time period with the club, but with that group staying together for such a long period of time, how do you think that helped in this particular UEFA Youth League campaign?
Yeah, it helped a lot. They were a great group of boys, and they had a good team spirit about them all the way from about, I think it was under 14s, some of them were under 13s when I first had them, and 12, 13-year-old, and they were just a group that was really tied together and enjoyed each other's company, and that really helped with the coaching side of things as well, because you knew you were getting a tight group that enjoyed each other's company, that were fun to be around, that just wanted to learn as well. the group did change a little bit over the years, with 1 or 2 players coming in, 1 or 2 players leaving. And then in the latter years, we managed to get a couple in. We Malik Zaid with the help of Tam Smith, getting him in from Hutchie Vale, and Kanai Omegwa came up from down south. So these players really helped us on our way. But no, they were just a good bunch of boys to be around, and had a good mentality about them. And so no, it was pleasing to see them get the rewards that they deserved over the years. At 14s, 15s, 16s, we all had good games against Celtic and Rangers, and we knew that we were close to being one of the better teams in Scotland. But there's no way that I think that they go on and do as well as what they did in the European competition.
Yeah, how special was that group of players from an early age? Could you see, well, they could potentially win like the under-18s, or a number of these could potentially go on to make their debuts for the first team, like Jacob Blaney, Oscar McIntyre have, for example?
Yeah, we saw that from an early age, and targeted them and kept on at them, because we did see them with potential. But so much happens with younger players now when they turn 17, 18, 19, and that step has been so hard for players, especially in Scotland, where we should be producing more players at that age, in my opinion. But no, the likes of Josh O'Connor and Mackenzie Weir when he was here, and Jacob Blaney were playing under-18s football at under-15s. So, they were fast-tracked, and they weren't just playing under-18s football, they were playing, scoring, competing at that age group. So we did have high hopes for them, even 3-4 years ago. So, that was all part of the plan, to get them fast-tracked as quickly as possible. To answer your question, the year before we won the league with the under-18s, I think we finished second or third. I can't remember, but we competed very well with the group of players that we had that were first year under-18. So we knew that last year 18s we were targeting going to win the league, which people will say, well, you shouldn't be winning leagues. They should be about development under-18s. Yeah. But I'm not going to lie, we wanted to win the league, and we wanted to get into Europe and give these boys a chance of playing in Europe, and that's what we did. And I'm not going to hide away from that fact. So we did. Luckily we went on and won the league. There was a lot more teams in Scotland that invested a lot more money in their academies and into their programs, but we managed to get a good group of players together. And what we did with that is pegged a few more on the back of it: the Ethan Laidlaws, the Jacob McIntyres, the Rudy Molotnikovs, and they've seen the standards, and the boys below in that have seen the standards now. So that was part of the way that we wanted to do it as well. So when we did win the league, which was great, we had the European competition to look forward to.
That's really interesting what you said there, because a lot of people do say, don't they, for academies, well, it's not about results, it's about their overall development and getting them into the first team. But on the flip side, by winning the league and then providing them with European competition where they have to face different sides that are, some are more technical, some are more physical, travel to different countries, play in front of crowds, arguably that's only developing them and benefiting them more, right?
Yeah, it was something I actually learned at the Scottish FA when I was with the youth national teams. They were talking about the UEFA competition, as a development of football. But what I found was that if you did things and you didn't win football matches, then you didn't get to a second phase, and then you wouldn't get to the Euro finals. So I thought that the best way of doing it was to try and win the games, get to the Euro finals, and give the players as much big competition against better teams as you possibly could. So yeah, you might have played well, but you hadn't won the game. So that meant you were playing a Georgia or a Macedonia rather than a France or a Germany or a Holland, and then giving the players the opportunity through a lot of funding for UEFA to go to UEFA finals. So it was more so with the girls in the 19s that I found that if you got them onto a program where we got them a lot fitter, we got them quicker, we got them stronger to compete with the Swedens, the Germanys, then you could get further in European competition. And we were fortunate enough to get to the last day in Europe twice to the European competition, and it ends up now that some of those players are at Chelsea, one's at Real Madrid, and we were playing in the last day in Europe every year against Germany, against France, against Holland, against the best countries, rather than the minnows where they're not going to get anything out of. So with Scotty Gemmell as well as with the boys, we did it twice when we got to the semi-finals of the Euros back in 2014, and then a couple of years later. And it was really enjoyable, not only from a coaching perspective where I learned a hell of a lot, but for the players, it was really learning. So I thought to myself, well, why shouldn't we be going to win the league with Hibs to get them into a European competition to give them a chance? So I kind of got it from that, and thought, yeah, it is about development, but I'm not going to lie, we set out to win the league that year, and that's what we did.
How different were those games against FK Molde and Nantes from a coaching perspective? Because I'm sure those two sides in particular you didn't really know too much about before the games, but also then for the players as well from the competition they were getting here, whether that be in the reserve league or in the under-18s.
Yeah, to answer your question, we knew everything about Molde, we knew everything about Nantes, we knew the players' names, where they played, what position they played. We'd watched numerous videos on them, so we knew every player. We knew what their team was going to be before about a week before. We knew everything about them. We'd done our homework, and people say, well, wow, that's just a development, but that's the way we work. We knew everything about them, how we were going to play, and really shape the boys up to go and give a good account of themselves. So yeah, I think it's important that the players see that we've got that in-depth information, and then that gives them the thought, well, hang on a minute here, look at what they're doing. This is for real. So people might just think you're turning up in Norway to play a game of football. We'd done a hell of a lot of looking at these of Molde especially beforehand. So we knew everything about them, and we knew what to expect. And I think that was shown in the way that we competed against all three teams that we played in the European competition.
Yeah, the away games in particular were a completely different experience for the young players, weren't they?
Yeah, and not only the games themselves, but the travel. Getting there. And I know you guys were on a couple of the trips, and it's the travel, it's the rest, it's the being in the hotel before games, and in a way, that is all part of the development as well. Because hopefully Hibs are playing in Europe in the next few years, and which these guys are part of. So, we want them to say, well, I've experienced that. I know how to handle that situation. And a big part of development is showing them different situations and experiences in football to be able to take into a first team career. So, we've done that with the young boys now. We've given them the European competition. We'd taken them away before that. They'd been to France. We've been over to France. We've been to Portugal. We'd been out at the Foyle Cup in Northern Ireland when they were younger. So they'd done all the travel, and they knew what it was like. And this was just one step further, with a big game at the end of it. But I can't speak highly enough of how they competed against Molde, home and away, home and away, and in the Dortmund game, which was well publicised.
Yeah, let's talk about that Dortmund game then, because I think everyone's aware of the funding, the stature of players that they had during that game. We went toe-to-toe with them throughout, came so close to progressing through to the next round as well. We spoke a lot about development of young players. I suppose this game mentally, even though they got so far, obviously didn't quite get it over the line. That'll always be in the back of their minds, I suppose, won't it? Of, next time I need to go one further. I can't let that disappointment almost happen again.
Yeah, and again, it comes down to those experience. So we've given them that experience, and that reality of being in that situation. So they might know how to handle it a little bit better or a little bit differently next time. But the Dortmund game was fantastic with the amount of Hibs supporters that turned up to watch the game. It puts a little bit of pressure on the boys, which is great. I think it's fantastic because we want them to play under pressure, because if you're playing in front of 20,000 fans or 50,000 fans, if it's Ibrox or Parkhead, you've got to be able to handle it. So we feel as an academy that we've given those players that experience of playing in front of a big crowd when it's live on the television, and they can only take something from that. If they can't handle that, then maybe football's not the game for them going forward at that level. So again, we've probably provided them with an experience from winning the league the year before that they otherwise wouldn't have had.
Yeah, and we spoke a lot about like your relationship and building relationships with players to ultimately help them develop. We saw some really special moments against Molde and against Dortmund with you and the players after the game, whether you had to put your arm around them or whether you were celebrating with them, throwing them up in the air. Talk to us about how those relationships and bonds develop over the years, but also then how they actually help get the best out of a young player and get them to understand what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I said it right at the start. It's the person first, and then it's the player. So, it's not just the players that we knew all their families, their moms, their dads, sometimes their brothers and their sisters, and now it's funny. There's one or two of the partners that you know as well. The girlfriends that you say hello to, and it feels kind of strange, but it's getting to know that person first, and then they trust you as a coach. And if you know the parents as well, you're finding out everything that's going on at home, everything that's going on at school, and that's a massive part of it. And once you've got the player on side, in so many words, you can start to coach them and they become coachable. But they were so relaxed, those boys, that they allowed you to coach them, and it became a really trusted group in the end.
Yeah, just finally on the UEFA Youth League, we spoke about the differences in terms of challenges, away trips. How beneficial do you think that competing in that European competition has been for those guys in terms of the new experiences? So playing in front of crowds, playing away in front of crowds abroad, playing against sides that are technically different, that are physically different, players that have different languages or speak different languages. How beneficial is that going to be as they look now to make that step up to the first team?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I really do. And it goes back to that development one. So if we hadn't won the 18s league that year, then they wouldn't have had these experiences. What people don't know is a lot of those trips are funded by UEFA to go. So we wouldn't have had those experiences if it wasn't for what we did that season and built for the 3 or 4 years before that. But they're going to play Dortmund, for example, and there's a lad Bino Gittins that's at Dortmund that came on against Chelsea in the real Champions League the other week. I mean, he could have played against us, so we were actually working out that he might have played against us a few weeks ago. So they realise how close they are to the real thing then. But the experience that we got over in Molde was a disappointment because we lost, so we had to handle that defeat. Then the journey home was a little bit longer, but what the players knew then was that they can compete and we can go and beat them at home. So that reinvigorated them, that gave them the focus for the second leg at home. So it was that experience of we've lost, but we know we can beat them. And then we've got as coaches, and then got to guide them. What could we do a little bit differently? We changed the shape from what we played over in Norway, and we showed them ways that we could maybe beat them if they were at it, if our boys were at it. So it's all those learning environments that we put them into that they came out and delivered on. The Nantes one, we were written off before it even started because of the French internationals that they had in their team. They were bigger than us, they were more physical than us, they were probably quicker than us, but we found a way, and that shows them that, listen, maybe we're not as good as them, but if we're at it and we find a way to beat them, we can beat them, and that's exactly what we did. A lot of the French didn't take it too kindly, but we found a way to go and beat them, playing in transition a lot of the time. But again, that's all part of their learning. And then against Dortmund, we were just, really unlucky that we ran out of legs right at the end of the game. Yeah.
Coming back from watching Hibs home or away and want dinner delivered to your doorstep, why not use Uber Eats? Whether you fancy a curry, a burger, a Chinese, or something a little bit different, Uber Eats has you covered. Following our partnership with Uber Eats, we've got a great deal for all Hibernian FC supporters. Use the code HIBSEATS10 for £10 off your first 3 orders on Uber Eats. And now, obviously, work continues to develop young players for the first team. I wanted to change the focus a little bit onto the current crop of under-18s. Supporters who've been keeping a keen eye on them or looking at the match reports on the website might have noticed that there's been an upturn of form of late. I'm keen to stress here the age of the current group of under-18s too. Just give us an insight into that, the ages and how they're developing.
Yeah, without getting into it too deep to bore everybody, our under-18s group now is all players that are born 2005 and 2006, and then we go down and we play 2007s. So we've got an under-18 player, an under-17 player, and an under-16 players, the best under-16 players at the moment playing in our under-18s. Currently we have 3 under-16s players in that squad. The majority are under-17s, so this is their first year really at under-18s, although Rudy and Jacob played quite a lot last year at under-18 level. So this is essentially their first year at under-18. So, they're coming up against bigger, stronger, more physical boys at the beginning of the season. They begin to mature physically. Hopefully they get a little bit better tactically, but they just get the learning experiences of playing in the games. So there has been a little bit of upturn in results, but what I will say this year, going against the grain of what we did last year, there's been a little bit more of an upturn in performances. But with football players and with kids in general, you'll be up and down like a roller coaster for the whole season. So there probably will be, results that we're going to have to learn from towards the end of the season, and there will be results that we'll be happy with. And the prime example of that is that earlier on in the season we went up to Aberdeen. I didn't think the boys had prepared properly. There was nobody on the bus that was ready to play. I didn't think when we got up there, the warm-up wasn't great, and we were 1-0 down after 5 minutes, so we ended up losing the game 4-0, to which they get the Gareth Evans hairdryer then, I think, after the game is the best way to describe it. And yet we go to Aberdeen on Friday, everything's right, they're preparing properly, tactically they're aware. We go 1-0 up after 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and we end up winning the game 4-0. So the message after the game is, listen, this is what happens when you're not prepared and you're not ready and you're not focused, and this is what can happen when you are,
Yeah.
Which one do you want to take? Do you want to take this one or do you want to take that one? It's up to you. It's not my choice, that's your choice.
And that's perfect, though, from a coach's perspective, isn't it? Because then they can see the differences between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at the Aberdeen that we did play, they've got the likes of Liam Harvey, Alfie Bavidge, Dylan Lubban that have all been on the bench for the first team in recent weeks. And then it's saying to these players, well, listen, this is what you're playing against. You're playing against players that are going on in the first team for a Premier League team. Do you think you can compete? Well, yeah. And hopefully that gives them the impetus to want to go on and be the best that they can be.
Yeah, and you mentioned players playing up, so Jacob and Rudy last year. Josh Landers is probably a good example in terms of that this year. How does that fast track a player's development?
Yeah, it's huge. The likes of Josh Landers played last year in the under-18s as well as an under-15s player. He was involved in the European competition coming on in Norway against Molde, and I think he came on in the home tie against Molde later on. For once, we're taking these boys out of school to come and play in these games because they're not 16 yet. And Dean Cleland's another one that's pushed on this year. Rory Whittaker is another one that's been involved in the under-18 squads and played quite a few games. So we try and fast track them and push them on as much as we can, but they've got to be able to handle it physically and mentally to be able to play in these games.
Yeah, and the club's obviously got a strong history in terms of developing young players through into the first team, whether that's a Paul Hanlon or a Josh Doig that the club can sell on for really good money. How much does that excite you, almost being part of helping the club and the club's future, but also the young lads that you get bonds with, helping them forge a career?
Yeah, there's nothing more special for me personally, and I guess the rest of the academy staff as well, is seeing a young player come through the academy and make his first team debut. The hard bit is after you've made that first team debut is staying in the team and getting regular game time with the first team. That's so difficult. But no, it's it really does mean a lot to me. And there was nothing more special than when I think it was the last game of last season when Jacob Blaney, Oscar McIntyre, Robbie Hamilton, and
testing me now,
Murray Aitken all made their debuts, and to see their families sitting in the stand, probably makes me feel as proud as what they were feeling that day, if I'm being honest. So it's nice, the whole family, when you've seen them over the 4 or 5 years travelling around Scotland, wind, rain, snow, sun, a lot, and then they eventually go on and pull the Hibs strip on and play at Easter Road, knowing how special it is myself. I know the feeling that they'd be getting when they go on the pitch, and for me it's a case then of just saying, yep, that's that job done, move on. Who's the next one? Who's going to be the next one? And that's just the way development football works, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely is. And I think, Gareth, that's a perfect way to end this podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been really, really insightful on a youth development point. And thank you, everyone, for listening as well. Let us know in the comments below who you'd like on the next Inside Training podcast.